AI Game Changers podcast with Luke Whibbs.
I guess the first kind of thing then, Buster, is do you want to kind of take us back to how all of this started for you? And then also maybe fill us in on the gaps of how an actor became an entrepreneur within an AI startup trying to solve some of the world's biggest problems using artificial intelligence, because that's not the traditional kind of thing that I see, man, for the guests. So do you want to take us back to that moment and just give us a story about how all of this evolved for you? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Luke. So it's cool because I usually don't get this question. Like usually we just start from the moment that, I'm already doing like the neuroscience research. But if we go way back to when I was an actor, I went to kind of like a non-traditional primary and secondary school, which involved a lot of acting and visual arts. So the focus was on that basically. A lot of the people from those schools like go to theater school afterwards, or to study to become a director or whatever. I just always had a huge passion for art and theater, and eventually also like became a professional actor in my teenage years, doing like commercials and a couple of plays, and but I was always reading from a very young age. I was always reading these books. I still remember kind of like these. I like, it sounds weird when I say it now, but like quantum mechanics but then kind of like for like for younger kids, with kind of like cartoons and stuff. I always loved that stuff. So I was really fascinated by it. But that kind of passion wasn't really fed on this school, of course. And even my teachers, when I would ask like how something actually worked, they would always be like, you can learn that in university.
Yeah.
And then around the time that I was, and I always another thing I guess is important from this stage in my life is that I was always kind of like observing other people. I remember that was like next to acting, like being on the stage, like off the stage, I was always kind of observing other people, and I was super fascinated by kind of what moved people. But we'll get back to that later. Then when I was around like 17, I think I had my first like good existential crisis, and I was applying for art schools, and then all of a sudden I thought like, okay, sure, there's artists that have like a huge positive impact on the world, but there's definitely more engineers. So I just decided to kind of go for the statistically most likely scenario, to have like something of a positive impact, and I went into the direction of like robotics and neuroscience, because I thought that was incredibly interesting. That's what I started to do in university, and then kind of with this idea of like, I want to create, for people that had lost a limb or something, I want to create like full index control robotic arms. That was my idea. Like, that's why I'm going to go and study. I always have to have like a very concrete goal. That's how I went into university. Then quite quickly I started to do stuff on the side. I actually was a security guard for the first year in university. So that's another random thing, which also teaches you a lot about people, right? So that's kind of like the red thread here. After that, I became a teacher while I was studying in chemistry. So teaching like secondary school exam year students in chemistry. And there I kind of became more and more convinced that while what I was working on was, this kind of like this idea of like enhancing the human body, right, with hardware, that maybe much more of it was in our software, kind of like, was in the mind and in the mindset, like what made people successful, because I saw like how much of a difference you can make with people by just giving them the right motivation and seeing kind of like what makes it connect for them, like giving people a purpose, making people feel heard, like the really basic things, right? And also giving people like examples and things that uh, that actually move them. Um, and then I did like my research in brain computer interfacing, which was super interesting. So worked on creating an environment to grow 3D brain structures, um, um, to uh, to both test Alzheimer medication, but also like towards brain computer interfacing. So that's making the connection between computer hardware and the brain. um, then I thought like that was very, very kind of like very much in the research phase, and also I had this belief that like it's kind of like our software and not our hardware that we need to enhance, right? Like if you look at the last 100,000 years of human development, it's all in the software. It's all in kind of like how we transferred knowledge and kind of like the ideas that we've generated, and not in changes in the brain. Um, so I saw just a lot of promise in that, and then I became kind of like I was looking for like what is the most applied thing that I can do that has something to do with this, and that's how I became interested in AI. Shall I go straight into like how that led to Fruit Punch? Because I don't know.
Uh, I mean, yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's how I got interested in AI. And then I actually started a master in data science at my university, and I was kind of shocked by how unapplied it was. Like I
mm,
wanted to like directly make an impact, and I started this master, and it was still super theoretical. Um, and um, and then I thought like, okay, if that place doesn't exist where you can actually learn in a way that is that moves you, um, then I have to create that place. And that's how we originally started with Fruit Punch AI. Um, looking into, can we get real world projects, like can we think of a more motivating way to learn applied AI? And then eventually that led me to a conversation with a South African, and then to South Africa, and then to the first project that we started with the wildlife rangers in applying AI to stop the poaching crisis.
mm, mm. So where do you we'll dive into Fruit Punch in much more
Yeah.
detail, man, but I just want to kind of like rewind you ever so slightly just to get a little bit more of an understanding of like where do you think that drive for impact comes from? Because there are plenty of other opportunities out there, right, where you can go and work for huge organizations and use AI to, I don't know, as you know, there's a ton of different use cases out there where you could go and earn a shit ton of money and be really successful and follow that, career trajectory that you typically see,
Yeah.
right? So where do you think the drive for impact over everything else comes from? Like, where did that flame start from?
I mean, fundamentally, I think it's a search for meaning, and I'm gonna I'll try and try I'll try and investigate that, but like the what it makes me think of instantly is uh like Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you know, like A Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote like a small book together with his theory of like logotherapy after he was like locked up in the concentration camps as a like a psychiatrist. And he says like basically the most fundamental drive of human beings is kind of like this need for meaning, and then things like money and pleasure and those things are all substitutes, right? And um and I think I just kind of like realized that early on, because I always felt kind of like um yeah, kind of like this, what I said, like this observing of people. Like I've always felt like I also, because I moved around a lot, I think I was just like kind of in my head a lot, so I just spent a lot of time thinking about things on an early age when I didn't have anything else to do.
Mm,
um and uh and I arrived at that like at around 17, that like basically all those other things, like, they don't really matter. Of course, like, this is only possible because I'm, in the position that I don't have to directly worry about those things, right? I mean,
Mm,
that
mm,
I'm
mm, mm.
fully aware of that. That's a very important part of it as well. But I think that's what led to it. Yeah.
Mm. But you're probably, well, you are an anomaly though, generally speaking, because, if you think about most entrepreneurs, their goal typically is to start, the next unicorn and build an exit and then, retire on a boat somewhere, right? So although,
I get seasick anyhow, so.
yeah, so,
I already
so
get
like,
seasick on the surfboard.
oh
Imagine on a boat.
shit, man. Well, you can retire on land. But there's such a strong narrative there, and if you look at the vast majority of people that,
Mhm.
I guess there's a bit of a paradox here, because I think if you look at entrepreneurs, generally speaking, most people that I speak to really want that, the end game of huge success and huge exits and whatever. Whereas if you look at the individuals within the data science community, most people want to have impact, right? And I think they share that
Mm.
narrative and that philosophy with
Yeah.
you. So I think you're an anomaly in the fact that you are the entrepreneur that's building the startup, but then also you've got the impact driven mindset that, I don't typically see. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to see that, man, for sure.
Yeah, I think I mean, what makes that anomaly? I I've thought about this in the context of billionaires. Like, why do, like, most billionaires like to hold on to their money, and then, for example, like, the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, why does she give it all away? But that makes a lot of sense in the end, right? Because you only amass a lot of money by holding on to your money in the first place. So I think that's kind of like a little bit of survivor bias, right? Um, and then with making a lot of impact, I think it's tremendously important that one has a lot of capital to do so. And I don't know yet if it's about a balance. I mean, I'm not in a position where I have to think about these things. Like, let's first try and be, like, incredibly successful, and then I can worry about that. But I don't know if it is a balance, or that it's more true that, just kind of like making the biggest, like, as long as you have kind of like this impact as the North Star, then making the biggest possible financial success out of it. If kind of like part of the engine is making this impact, I think that then it's fully aligned, kind of, you know. So
Mm,
it's like I mean, if you have a non-profit, I think in the end, if you want to really solve, like, humanity's greatest challenges, like the Sustainable Development Goals and all of that, we have to take it out, like, not take it out of the profit margins, right? And um, nothing against non-profits, but I believe that it it should be at the core of the world's most successful companies to actually contribute to life on this planet.
mm.
That's the only way that things are really going to change. So that's why I kind of believe that these things go hand in hand. But I'll see when I get there, you know.
Yeah, man, we'll do a podcast 2.0 in a couple of years. Okay, man. Well, look, I think we've kind of skirted around like the fruit punch idea a little bit. So maybe for the listeners who don't know you guys and have never heard of you, can you give us an overview of what Fruit Punch does, why it exists, and what the purpose is of the business?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I briefly touched on, like, how we started with this first project, the AI for Wildlife project, where we started working with the rangers to build this autonomous drone with thermal cameras to search for poachers in the wildlife reserves. That was our first challenge. That was very hands-on. After that, we kind of, so there we brought together this group of over 50 AI engineers to develop these machine learning models, and even like develop the architect, like the hardware, basically, like, sketch out based on the energy requirements and the weight constraints and that kind of stuff. um, that was kind of like the first challenge. And like, when I say challenge, what I mean is basically, this 10-week long project where we get together 15 to 50 AI engineers to work together as one big team, and then in sub teams as well, to solve a problem of some kind of nonprofit or impact startup or impact other kind of impact organization. And this is kind of like our vehicle to both like a crowdsource an AI solution for like and bring AI to place where resources are scarce, but also definitely uh, like give people real world experience. So we have like meteor and senior people joining those challenges because they want to make a positive impact, but we also have a lot of junior people and students joining those challenges. And that's where the need in me came from in the beginning, right? To kind of like, instead of just doing these assignments, actually making an impact. And it turned out, like when we started to do these challenges, that like you don't have to study for 3 to 5 to 6 years to start doing something in the real world and to actually contribute. And it's kind of like, I guess you could look at it as kind of like an apprenticeship, but then in a kind of scalable way, um, where people are doing up kind of like the most fundamental knowledge. We have like those boot camps and master classes. We have like the world's best professors giving lectures for FruitPunch AI. But like everything that we accredit people for, so instead of letting them make tests or stuff like that, is like just like, how did you perform? Like, what were your deliverables? What did your teammates think about you in building a solution that actually helped people? And so it's you kind of can look at it as kind of like a challenge based university, which is free, has free admission, because I believe that, you know, we have, like, if we want to really progress humanity, we have to kind of take away this barrier to entrance to education, right? We have to make it like remotely available to everybody, the best education in the world, and also make it free. My dream one day is to pay people to educate themselves, right? Um, and get the most brilliant people from all around the globe and give them like these tools to apply AI for good and this mindset, and then get them to work at like at all kinds of organizations, kind of carrying on this mission of applying this technology in an ethical way. Um, so I guess you could look at it like that. Like these challenges are the core part of it. We also do some theory stuff through boot camps, and then in the end the goal is to get them to apply AI like full time in an ethical and sustainable way.
Awesome, man. So did it start for you as a business idea? Because I was watching a talk of yours earlier, and there was quite an interesting story about how it all started, right? But maybe just give us some insight there. You know,
Yeah.
was this how did this actually start for you?
Yeah, so it definitely didn't start as a business idea for me. So if you look at the timeline, like you said, it's like 4 years ago by now that we started it as a as a community, um, to to give people some real world experience to solve real problems. And then now almost 2 years ago, the December 23rd is when we raised a round to turn it into a startup. So that happened kind of like way later, with the idea of like, let's, like, there's a lot of demand from both the engineers and the universities, and also companies are interested in what we're doing, so let's scale this approach. So that's how it evolved from that initial idea to a startup.
Okay, and because you've got a ton of different use cases, like on the website and what you guys are working on. Generally speaking, like the newest one that I saw is that AI for Sales challenge, which
Yeah,
is really cool.
very
But
cute.
yeah, exactly. Right. I
That's
was all
facial
over into it.
recognition of seals for the people that are listening. Yes.
Yeah. So what is that? Just for, because that's for
Yeah.
non-invasive studies, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, sorry, we didn't actually say we were going to talk about this one specifically, but I just want to know.
Yeah, of
So
course.
what is that for? Like, why are they studying the seals? What's it about?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're doing that one together with Colgate University in the USA, and basically we're working more and more with marine biologists to help them in their study of coastal ecosystems. This kind of started with our AI for coral reefs challenge, where we realized by working with Reef Support, super cool people, check them out. That kind of like the health of a coastal ecosystem both is incredibly important for all life in the ocean, but it's also very important for life on land because basically the if there is like a healthy coastal ecosystem protects the land from all kinds of hurricanes and floods and that kind of stuff, and also it sequesters a lot of carbon. So it's like a triple whammy basically, and this challenge specifically is in monitoring of seals. So seals are, of course, like kind of at the top of the food chain. So they're a great indicator of the health of an ecosystem. And previously, like seals would be chipped or something like that, but that influences their behavior as well. Like it's not ideal to chip them. It can also be harmful. So what you can also do is just identify the individuals visually, right? Because they come out and like they chill on the rocks. So until now, the researchers have been doing this by just looking at the images and trying to match like the patterns, on the yeah, it's not fur, yeah, on the skin, I guess. Um, but like just like human beings, they have very distinct facial features. Like we can't see that because we're trained, our neural net in here is trained on human beings, but they have just as distinct facial features as us, which means that you can just retrain facial recognition, like facial recognition model of human beings on seals, and then just identify the individuals like that. And then by setting up cameras on multiple points, you can record their movements and their behavior, and if they're alive or not, of course, and that can then help in the study of these ecosystems, which can give you good data on advising local government in the changes that they might need to make, and so it's tremendously important.
These are wicked use cases, man, honestly, because
Yeah.
yes, there are really cool, profitable use cases out there that you would look at and think, oh, that's great, like something that we don't really need as a you know a unit, but okay, cool, it's advancing us in some sort of way. But I mean, when you hear about use cases like this, you must, as an individual in your team, you must be able to sleep at night quite easily, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, on that part, definitely. Of course, like having the financial part figured out really well also helps you sleep at night, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, on that side, definitely.
Mm. Good, man. Well, look, there was one use case that I just wanted to kind of dive into, because I think
Yeah,
this was probably the catalyst for you guys as an organization, which would be the searching for poachers use case,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So for the people listening, again, sorry to kind of just hammer you with questions about this, but can
Oh
you
no.
give us because you touched on it earlier, but can you give us kind of the background of that, like how that use case
Yeah,
started,
yeah,
and just give us all of the information that we all want?
yeah. I'll uh I'll do something crazy and give the real story.
Okay, do that one.
just because I think it's important sometimes for people to hear like how random things, like how they actually happen, right?
Mm,
Like I can give like the 1 minute pitch, but the reality was that I was I was thinking about like how can we do this, like of these, like picking up these kind of like AI for good use cases, to learn by doing. And then my girlfriend at the time was like, I want to go to South Africa. And I was like, yeah, I don't have time for that. And then, and I was like, kind of like as when pigs can fly kind of scenario, I was like, yeah, well, if I have a good reason for work, then we're going to go to South Africa. Because I'm also concerned, with like the impact of doing a flight like that and that kind of stuff. Um, and then the day after, uh, a friend of mine, like I said this to a friend of mine, and she told me, well, I actually know this guy from, well, he's a Dutch guy but lives in South Africa, and he's like in like a town like an hour away, and he's said something to me about wanting to like apply AI in to like fight wildlife poaching. I was like, okay. So I called him, and he was in the country, and I met up with him like 2 days later, and this was Peter Boon. He I'll get into yeah, what happened there later, but so we had a super exciting conversation about like let's try and just see like if we say like, hey, we're willing to help you with AI development, like put out this call to action if we get any response. So we did. He went on like South African radio when he was back, did this call to action, and a lot of people responded, like a lot of private reserves mostly. So you have kind of like the national reserves, which are really big wildlife parks, and then you have the smaller ones that are kind of like yeah, more for like rich tourists.
Right.
So a lot of private ones responded. They're also super important for the preservation of these animals. So it's like, okay, yeah, now okay, now we're gonna go to South Africa. So I went to South Africa, and like within the first few days that I was there, we actually got a call from Robbie, who was working in Pilanesberg. That's kind of northwest of Johannesburg, which is one of the bigger. It's the biggest private reserve, but it's kind of like private public. So it's like it's one of the bigger ones.
Mm.
And he said, yeah, we're flying with drones already. We're kind of like this organization that we're both rangers, but we also have this nonprofit using technology specific and seeing how we can use technology to aid wildlife conservation. So that I was like, oh man, this is perfect, because working with people that have that are completely no tech, that's very difficult. Working with hardware in a place where that's not your home place is incredibly hard. So I went there, and I did like the whole surveying. We went through the wildlife reserves. I went on like with them, searching for poachers in the night.
No way.
It was so that was like a super exciting experience. I also saw like we were there after a poaching.
Mm.
Um, I saw like a rhino that had been. I mean, this, yeah. I never know like how, like I shouldn't be too graphic because
No,
this kind of
definitely be graphic.
be graphic.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it was a rhino that had been. It was still alive. It kind of like they have like the dual, like the little
Mm.
knob and then the big horn. So the half of its face had been cut off, um, and and the and the child. So it was a mother, and the child was kind of like confused, like walking around it. Um, so I saw that stuff as well. That like properly shocked me.
Mm.
Um,
Because
and
I think it's quite easy to know that it's a problem, but until you go there and actually experience it in real time and actually see it, I've got no idea how that feels to see something like that. Like,
yeah, it's honestly like I think that's like the only, maybe I think the only time that I really felt kind of like this. I kind of felt, from what I've heard, like of descriptions, like shell shocked,
mm,
seeing that. I was just like kind of like numb. Um, and Yeah, and then you get back to base and you see like, and they have these skulls lying around, these huge skulls, and you see like different ways that the horns have been cut off. Like this is like a skull where they use the chainsaw. You see, like in the bone, you see the, and this is a skull where they use the like a machete or something like that. Um, and so yeah, that definitely really stuck with me. Um, and we had some pretty concrete ideas as well of how we could help them. Because so like I said, they were already flying with drones, but they were doing it like manually. So like RC drones, remote control drones, that they have to then fly kind of like in line of sight. Um, and to operate all of this, they needed like 5 people. But when they were flying with drones, they would be able to survey like these this wildlife reserve, which is about 30 kilometers. I believe it's 30 kilometers in in uh, the diameter of the park is like 30 kilometers, and they will be able to serve that with one drone
Mhm.
and make sure that there weren't any poachings when they would be doing that.
And this
So
was
that
just with live HD cameras, right? So no tech actually in the cameras themselves, but just straight up
yeah,
drone cameras.
yeah, and that's why they need a lot of people. So
Mm.
you have to have one person that is that a trained pilot that is controlling the drone, because it's not a quadcopter, it's like a fixed wing drone. And so they're a bit more difficult to control, but you need that because like quadcopters make a lot of noise, so they disturb the wildlife. And also they can't fly for like these fixed wing drones can fly for like 6 hours and that.
Mm.
um, and
How many do they have, Buster? Is it just the one, or do they have multiple of these drones?
Yeah, no, so they at the moment still they have the one.
Mm.
They also had the one back then. And that is because of like they have the one, and they also can't fly it all the time because of just a constraint on like human resources, basically. And that's exactly what we set out to solve, that we like could create an autonomous drone platform that can eventually just be used by rangers, can be launched by rangers, and like surveys the wildlife reserves on its own, and then just pings the GPS location back when it has found something. Like
Mm.
that's the thing that we set out to do. And the first step in that was to, like, you have the like the thermal video feed is like a grayscale of a video feed, not a lot of pixels, I think like 360p or something like that, um, on which they have to watch this like 8 hours, like through the night, to detect poachers. It's incredibly hard to see human beings on that, so there's like some human error, and of course it's another human that you have to have like on the spot. So we set out to solve that one first, and we kind of like build out from there. And right now we're doing like we've done a lot of challenges in that. We've implemented all of that, and now we're working on the autonomous flight part of it. And when that is done, then we just have like a completely autonomous platform, and then we can just, because we really focused on keeping the cost of the hardware low.
Mm.
So it's a couple $100, this whole setup, this whole drone setup.
No way. What,
Yeah,
including the drone?
yeah, yeah.
Really? I thought it'd be
Yeah.
thousands for something like that.
Yeah, yeah, no, but normally it is.
Yeah.
Normally it's super expensive, but we really focused on like low cost,
Mm.
and then just like supplementing it with AI. You know, like if you
Mm.
have super good software, um, that's possible. And then when we have that completely autonomous platform that's relatively cheap, we can just copy and paste that like in all the wildlife reserves,
Mm.
and then we have a really scalable solution,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, because the oh shit, man, I've got so many questions. Because the thing that, although it's complex, it's actually fairly simple in terms of um the solution, right? It's
Yeah.
not so complexity to get there, but the actual thing, thermal imaging to spot people poaching, is it's quite a simple comparatively to what else is out there, right? So what's the barriers for this being rolled out in mass across the entire, across pretty much every park?
Um, it's, I would say it's mostly, I mean, we're definitely working with like cutting edge technology, like some of our partners like Fleur, like they have the best thermal camera systems. Um, so and then the drone that mostly Spots has developed is also incredibly efficient. But so those things, those constraints we've checked off. Um, but I would say after after we've like solved the completely autonomous flight, that is like the main barrier now. But after that, I am assuming that the main barrier is going to be kind of like um, yeah, the legal stuff. Like, I mean, South Africa is incredibly corrupt, right?
Mm,
That's no secret. Which means that um, just having a good or the best solution to solve a problem isn't nearly enough to get it implemented.
mm,
Um, so we have to, I guess we have to start doing like a lot of lobbying or yeah, being really smart about like kind of like who we get to sign off on using this in the national wildlife reserves.
mm.
Yeah,
So is it corrupted in the sense that there would be links? Oh, I'm going off on a massive tangent here, but um, is there? There must be strong links between the supply chain of ivory and whatever else with the government, because otherwise,
yeah,
how is that going to exit the country, and what are the supply chain routes for that to happen? Right. So,
yeah.
how far does that corruption go? Do you think?
Um, I know it goes. I know it's directly linked. Because like the diplomatic immunity of government officials, they constantly misuse that to smuggle stuff out of the country. So they're not even allowed to check what they're taking with them. But I know of a story because, of course, I mean, like,
Just sorry, Buster. Before we move on from that, just rewind just ever so slightly. So they're not. So customs aren't allowed to check what some government officials take out of the country.
yeah,
What? I didn't know that was legit.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god, that is absolutely insane. Regardless of the size of the cargo that they would be taking out, or just personal, or
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think it's kind of like just not allowed to check their trunk, the trunk of their car, kind of situation. Um, but like the Robbie and the rest of the people that I'm working with, like I have a lot of conversations with them about this, and they've also been in kind of like the special police divisions, like, and in the army as well in South Africa. And they tell me stories about that they do, like when they did check, that they would just find like tens of kilos of rhino horn just in the back, in the trunk of the car. um so it's like, yeah, it's straight up to the top,
mm.
I think.
How does that make you feel? Generally speaking, knowing that the actual system that you're trying to change is actually corrupt at the very core of the organisation that you're trying to help.
Yeah. um yeah, honestly, so so the people that I work with in South Africa, they are incredibly angry about these things, and rightfully so, I think. And I don't want to kind of like um, how do you say that? Like, say that anger is not valid. But I wouldn't say I'm angry about it. I think kind of like from the outside perspective that I have, I mostly just kind of have um, a form of compassion for it, I think. Because in the end, like, I mean, South Africa is like it's just like the country, like the whole history of the country is like just completely fucked, right?
Mm,
It's like um it's a country that has like just a history of like a lot of very different people fighting over it, right? You had the original tribes, um, that were like, and then you had like the Dutch, like the boeren, the farmers, like the Dutch farmers that were like on the supply route of the VOC, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, that then moved up. I think they lived in relative peace with the local tribes. Then you had the English people that then, came to kind of like just murder everybody and take over the country. Then they like got the people living kind of like north of South Africa, those tribes, like the Zulu tribes, to help them defeat the Boeren. So and then of course, like, it became kind of like a relatively well off country, and then just everybody from the whole continent kind of like collected there. And it's just like such a mix of people, and there's such like systematic inequality that, like, yeah, can you blame people for growing up in a certain environment? I don't think so. Like, my goal is not that I'm not directly angry at these people. I just want to kind of like I just want to do something that makes a difference, and I think we have to, what we call, like, stop the bleeding. Because if we're just going to focus on like systems change, then these mammals are going to be extinct by the time that we're done. That takes generations, and we have like less than 10 years at this pace before everything is extinct, basically.
Mm.
um, so we have to stop the bleeding. That's why I focused on this. um, but in the end, like, I can't blame local people for that. I guess you can blame, like, the international cartels that are smuggling it.
Mm.
um, yeah.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question, really, because the real problem isn't actually the poachers, right? I mean, obviously, that's more of the symptom, I guess,
Mm.
but that's the lowest end of the chain, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's
um,
yeah, that's the boys that get like some kind of rifle, pushed in their hands by some cartel leader and sent into the wildlife reserves. Yeah.
mm. So, do you think that? I mean, I already know the answer to this question and what you'd probably say, but do you think this problem is ever actually going to go away without some kind of system break? Not necessarily from a government perspective or from um, a national standpoint, but more from a supply chain to wherever this is going, Asia, I would imagine.
Mm.
Um, do you think this problem's always going to be there, but at a lower level percentage? Is this going to be something that you think could ever be completely eradicated, or do you think it would be a consistent problem that would need to be dealt with?
I mean, I think the way that we're working on it is not the final solution. Like, I don't think it can be completely stopped by what we're doing. Um, you know, it's kind of like, we're kind of like um the people building the wall, right? Instead of kind of, I don't know, negotiating with the enemy or whatever. um but from what I know, like, the problem is that, like, there's I think there, over time, there's gonna just be a mindset change, but that change takes generations, right? It takes decades. um I think, like, that is just gonna take incredibly long. At the same time, we have, like, these people in the countries where the demand is coming from. They're becoming more and more wealthy, and kind of their wealth is is a couple of decades ahead of the mindset change, which means that the demand is increasing. So that is in the short term, I see the problem becoming worse rather than better.
Really? Even today in 2022?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea, man. Like, I had no idea that the demand for that sort of stuff was increasing. I thought just generally down
Yeah.
to science and um, just awareness that, yeah, crazy, man. Insane. So, so why do you think the demand for that sort of product is? I know you mentioned about wealth and stuff,
Mhm.
but like, what? But they've always had enough money. So, what's the real reason, do you think, why that is increasing?
Well, who's had enough money?
Well, for the people that have been buying it, I guess.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a luxury product, right? It's per gram, it's more valuable than gold or cocaine or whatever. Um, and it's ingrained in their culture that these kinds of things, like they improve they improve the quality of your erection, or they cure cancer or whatever. Um, so when people are able to afford it, they're gonna buy it.
Mm,
That's so it's definitely with kind of like the middle and upper class growing in Asian countries, that is increasing the demand. And that's not saying that everybody has this mindset, but it is also just true that there's a lot more people there that still have kind of like uh this mindset, because they have just a completely different kind of philosophy to healthcare or whatever.
mm. So, I guess, so the end game for you then around like this specific use case, how do you see this kind of playing out um, over the next couple of years? Like, what's the kind of ideal
Yeah.
end solution within this particular use case for you?
Yeah, within this use case, I mean, we're gonna keep focusing on kind of like our part of it, which is stopping the bleeding, and that's rolling out these drones to a lot of places. Ideally, I would have um, like our focus is not in the end to run these things in production. Like, as FruitPunch AI, like this was the first series of challenges that we set up. But as FruitPunch AI, our goal is to, like I said, get people from all over the globe and train them in ethical and sustainable use of this technology. So my dream would actually be that once we are at the point that this is a fully autonomous platform, that we can give it to some people that want to take this and turn it into a startup, and and start kind of like create a sustainable business model, so they can roll this out, and over all the different parks. That I would say that's my goal with this project. And this project is kind of unique, because in most other projects we don't get so involved anymore. Like, this is the first one that we ever did, right? That we ever started. So most other projects, we just create the solution, both open source it and implement it with the partner that we work with, and then then it's theirs, and they can do with it whatever they want. Um,
Mm,
but this one specifically, I would like to see be turned into a startup, because I really believe in that as like a vessel for innovation.
mm, mm. Um, Honestly, man, I hope. Obviously, I hope that you nail it, and it becomes realised and everything. So, um, I mean, this is obviously just a drop in the ocean for you and that particular use case, right? Because you guys do so much other amazing things. So, not enough time to go into it now. But I mean, if anyone's listening and they want to check them out, obviously follow Buster, go onto the website. There's tons of information on there that will help you. But Just as we're kind of wrapping up now, Buster, thanks so much for just all of your insight there, man, and your story and stuff. But obviously fascinating, and it's one of those conversations and one of those stories where I'm like, it's totally different from the normal kind of conversations I have right on this podcast, because it's a completely different model and it's so emotional, and the drivers are just so intense that it's incredible. So just to kind of finish up and wrap up, like, what is the two questions? So what's the ultimate goal for you guys as an organization? Actually, quick side note, just one other thing, because I've been meaning to ask you this at some stage and I haven't. FruitPunch, where's the name from? Just out of interest.
Yeah, so the name, like, of course, I tell a kind of like a polished version of the story, right?
Right.
I mean, you have to, otherwise it's like just one big tangent. Um, but like how we actually, the first thing that we did, as kind of like an exploration in kind of how can we teach people applied AI in a more kind of like exciting way, is that we were part of this robot soccer team.
Right.
And that was like a hardware thing, right? Because I came from the robotics side, and we were at this global like finale in Toronto, and the people are like in between the matches, they're like doing edits on the code and everybody's super busy, but the people that were kind of like that organized the intranet, so the internal connection, they started handing out fruit punch to kind of like start chatting with people and kind of like learn more about them. And so we started chatting with them over a bowl of fruit punch, and they organized these huge like esports competitions, like these LAN parties with like 10,000 people. And that's like one of the first things where we were like, what if we organize an AI esports competition? Like that's what, like, nerds like to play video games. Like we like to play video games. Like why not organize an AI esports competition, to like teach people applied AI, and then what can we call it? And we had a bowl of fruit punch, so we were like, yeah, let's call it fruit punch.
There you go.
So that was like the very kind of unorthodox origin story of that name, and then we worked on that with a group of people for a year, actually built like an entire game where you could like where we had even like 150 people from around the globe, like in teams of like 5 to 10, competing with their deep reinforcement learning agents in this environment to kind of build this agent that then would be able to compete with the other ones. And then after a year, it kind of like that initial group fell apart, and then I decided to continue with like I wanted to do something that had like a positive impact. So I decided to continue with the AI for Good challenges, and that's where the AI for Wildlife story starts. But that's a year in.
Yeah.
But like that's like another example of like how random the start of things are.
Yeah, man,
Like,
I'm with you.
I started this basically because we wanted to set up a AI esports gaming competition, and I went to South Africa essentially. Like the spark was because my girlfriend wanted to take a holiday, like so
Yeah.
it's, and yeah, so that's another iteration of like don't like feel ashamed for like taking random steps, like
Maybe it's not so random, man.
yeah, maybe it's fate, you know.
So what is the, so just as a final question now then,
Yeah,
Buster, the I guess, look, what's the eventual goal of you guys
yeah,
as an organization, but
yeah,
then ultimately how can people get involved? How can they help? What's the most pressing thing that if someone was listening right now that you would be like, we need people to help here. This
yeah,
is where we're going. This is where we need people to help. What
yeah,
would that look like?
yeah. So the ultimate goal for us is to basically create this build this global community of AI engineers willing and able to solve humanity's greatest challenges. That's kind of like the line. What that means for us is that, we're taking this and turning it into kind of like a place where anyone can get can get the theoretical knowledge, but also the applied knowledge, and kind of like the portfolio and skill tree to really be an AI engineer that can make a difference. And we've tried out a couple of different business models for that. Like, we've pivoted quite a few times by now. And eventually eventually realize that where the real value is, like, if we want to provide it for free to like, people from all kinds of backgrounds, and if we want to do these challenges non-profit, the business model that makes the most sense is earning on the side of getting these engineers to companies, right? Kind of like the matching side. So it's like a very kind of simple recruitment problem, where our biggest added value for both the engineers and organizations is with junior people, because through joining our challenges, they have like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months of real world experience, which means that they can start making an impact directly when they work in an organization, instead of having to be trained for a couple of months, and for sure that they have the skills. So right now, what in the short term, what we can use most help with is basically getting in touch with organizations that are looking to hire, preferably a lot of junior talent that experience this problem of, like, we're hiring a bunch of people, but we don't know what their quality is. It's kind of like this gamble. And to kind of alleviate that for them, and kind of be their funnel of, like, super high quality talent with proven skills.
I guess
That
on that as well, Buster, sorry to just jump in there real quick, but like, surely there must be some organizations out there that are the privatized equivalent of some of the, or at least in the kind of like, the secondary circle. So, for example, the autonomous flight stuff, I know of not tons, but I know of some organizations that are specifically private startups that just focus on autonomous flight, right? So there are definitely some like partnerships that you could have with those organizations to kind of like create that funnel of talent.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just, as you're talking, I'm
No,
just
absolutely. Yeah. No, we should definitely, like, we pivoted towards this model, like, like 4 months ago. So we're definitely still figuring it out, and it's also a matter of density of talent, right? Yeah. So that's definitely like relevant links. Right now, we're not in contact with those organizations, because we're really building this kind of like more dense network of talent in Europe first, because that's just how you can, like, if we get a vacancy or a certain ask, being able to fill that from the community means that we have to have a very dense community, like with a lot of people in kind of like on a small footprint. But yeah, those kinds of contacts are definitely valuable. Yeah.
Well, look, dude, I hope there's some people listening to this now that reach out to you either as a contributor or an organization that could potentially use you from a, sounds a bit weird, me being a headhunter and a recruiter being like, go and use these guys. But I mean,
we can
honestly,
collaborate as well, I think,
yeah. But I think the good that you guys do for the world is phenomenal. So again, I hope that people listen to this and do reach out to you, man. So honestly, dude, thank you so much for the conversation. And I mean, I wish you the best of luck in terms of everything that you're trying to do, because it's needed. And yeah, thank you so much, man.